Gold price got to 340, fluttered back down to 305, went to 340 again. And I saw the same thing happen a second time. I called a friend of mine at the time who was one of the Democrat side of the House Banking Committee. He was on the legal team. And I said, is this the New York Fed knocking the price of gold down for the second time? He said, yes. I told my subscribers to sell some options we bought about a month before. That's the only other time that I saw it happen. Now, the moral of the story is this. There were serious people offside that got caught with that spike. They had to get out of the way. The second time gold went up to 340, guess who wanted it? Alan Greenspan. He wanted gold to go higher and publicly said so. Why? Because everybody in 2002 was petrified of deflation. So now they can look at the gold price and say, hey, look, gold's going up. We're not going to have deflation. Go ahead and start putting money back to work in risk assets. So they got out of the way. Gold went a whole lot higher in the end. So what is too often blamed on a conspiracy are these hot money directional traders. Sometimes they follow the script, sometimes they don't.
Look at it this way. I'm not saying there's no manipulation. I think every market is manipulated. The stock market's manipulated, the silver market's manipulated, the commodities are manipulated, everything's manipulated. If you think it's manipulated all in one direction, I think you're mistaken. These guys are out there, and I'm not talking about the central banks, I'm talking about the JP Morgans or whatever. The money markets, the money market makers, they don't care whether they're making money if something's going up. They don't care if it's going down. They just care that they're making a spread on it. If they can push something in one direction, they'll do it. They'll make money on it. If they can push it in another direction, they'll run the stops up. They'll run the stops down. And so, and it's what amazes me in all of this is people look at this every time gold plunges and they say, oh my God, look at this, someone battered the price down. Well, and supposedly when it goes up $100 in a week, well, that's just natural. So you need to look at this stuff and have quite a bit of skepticism, if you ask me, on all of these reports where people are just saying that that someone's doing something. My gosh, if there was a shred of evidence on this, and I'm not talking about the stuff that GATA puts out there all the time. Most of that stuff is trumped up. Believe what you want, and they can make it sound pretty good. But when you stop and look at what they're saying every time, it's all suspicion, it's all hypothesis, it's all theory. I've never seen a shred of evidence that someone is actually acting to suppress the price of gold.
Then why is there such a big spread between physical demand right now and paper?
What spread is there?
Well, the fact that, if you look around, gold everywhere here, silver same way, that people are running out of actual...
There is no spread, actually.
Worldwide, and yet, why is the paper so cheap?
This is an important point, a very important point. People talk about these spreads. Well, there really isn't one. There is a shortage of small denomination coins. If you want to buy gold or silver bars, you can do so with almost no markup. So what's happened here is when the price of gold and silver plunged, people went to rush out and buy coins. There was a massive, massive shortage of coins. Just because there's a shortage of small denomination coins doesn't mean that there's a shortage of gold or silver.
MF Global, tell that the MF Global investors that invested in MF Global, they lost their
What does MF Global have to do with this? Their gold was, that was a re-hypothecated...
Comex couldn't deliver. Yeah. Comex could not deliver.
There was a small blight, but a very important one.
Comex could not deliver it.
Yeah, and UBS recently failed to deliver. There have been a few other cases where they've, ABN AMRO, a few other cases of large investors who were told they had
With
to
MF
take...
Global, we're talking about fraud. We're not talking about, if you want to go buy gold at Gold Money or any other reputable place, you can do so. You can take delivery of it. I can buy at Gold Money or silver at Gold Money and pay an exceptionally tiny markup over that, and I know that I'm buying physical allocated gold at at the price that's based on the current future price. You're asking me about, you're comparing this to MF Global, which is like comparing this to Bernie Madoff. Well, you know what? Shit happens. Fraud happens. So, that's what happened. And this has nothing to do with the current spot price of coins, that there's any shortage anywhere. There was fraud at MF Global. There was fraud at other places. I'm not saying I can prevent fraud, and maybe there ought to be some controls here. Maybe someone should be looking into some of these things. Actually, I think people should be looking into, J.P. Morgan and a lot of what central banks are, the big banks are doing. That doesn't constitute a physical shortage of silver or gold.
Other thoughts on the manipulation issue? Marshall, Dr. Warren, Jay?
I just wish that Chris Powell was here now, not Bill Murphy. But Chris Powell, I think, would be a great debate with Mish, because I think Chris does have some solid evidence of some shenanigans. I don't know if it's manipulation necessarily, but I mean, clearly with UBS failing to deliver and a couple of other large deliveries failures and forcing people to take currency instead of, it's okay right now, because Mish is right, you go back out and take your currency and buy the gold or silver. But at some point in time, if there's a run and there's a panic for gold and silver, I mean, I think the paper markets are so much larger than the physical markets.
About 100 times.
About 100 times, Jeffrey Christian says. So if all of a sudden people decide they want to start taking delivery, when we really have when the con game is up and people really have to go for the real thing, I'm not so sure there won't be hell to be paid. The price of gold and silver might not.
There's so much leverage out there. I don't even know there's enough money for people to go out there and take delivery of all the futures
It's not.
they buy.
Right.
It's not.
Of other things too.
I like to say, if you get a chance to put Volcker in his memoirs, he stated that one of his mistakes, and at that period, it was that he really didn't get a handle on this gold thing. So that was an indication. If you read also Arthur Burns' writings, you could see there was manipulation at certain points, a great deal. And so when you have chaos in these markets, they do intervene. That's one reason why you had the plunging team.
Plunge protection team.
With Reagan. So you do have these things. Now, how much it is, we don't know. But I'm willing to bet that they are there, for better or worse, to do whatever their agenda is. And one thing it is that constantly, above all things, is to protect this. To maintain confidence in this paper. Because if you get 5,000 gold and then $200 silver, I can tell you real quickly, this won't be worth nothing. Nobody will have any kind of faith. So they do have to maintain some type of control over the situation.
So the policymakers have decided we don't have a gold standard, so we have to rely on animal spirits. And animal spirits is what Chris was talking about. Animal spirits, so it's a gigantic con game. Greenspan wants the gold price to go up, so you think we're not going into inflation. So it's all about managing, conning all of us into hating this real money and loving this fake stuff, because they create this fake stuff to redistribute wealth in their favor. That's the con game, and Nixon enabled it in 1971 when he took us off the gold. That opened the floodgates for all of the problems we have now. It allowed the United States to send its military to beat the hell out of countries, change regimes, and rule the world. I think it's a conspiracy, a major conspiracy. A conspiracy because people have been doing it since the beginning of mankind, to try to gain wealth at the expense of other people. I mean, back to biblical times, goes all the way back.
Jay, Jay. In fact, I'm glad you brought up Chris Powell and Ghana, since they were successful in suing the Fed for manipulation. And the documents that the Supreme Court judgment came down on were literally minutes in the meetings of the Fed, where they said, if gold does this, we'll do that. If gold does this, we'll do that.
Yeah.
It was a pure case of manipulation, and the judgment should have been $2,800. It should have been $2.8 billion.
Well, in fact, the Fed says that we have the legal right to do it. We don't do it, but we have the legal right to do it.
I want to make a comment quick about the paper market again, and you've got to keep this in context, whether it's gold, stocks, whatever. How many of you remember the very first Frankenstein movie from 1931? The movie ended with Dr. Frankenstein being held up by the monster on his burning windmill and thrown down. Dr. Frankenstein's creation. I had a guy do a cartoon for my newsletter with the Frankenstein monster with speculators / markets on it, picking up Dr. Bernanke and throwing him off the windmill. Should have been Greenspan. Bernanke was more like Igor, because Greenspan was really the mad scientist that caused all this. So keep in mind that these markets that have been created and seeded with obscene gobs of money, it flows here, it flows there, and like Mish said, hedge fund traders that ran gold to $1,900 and recently shorted it because that was a game in town, they would do the same thing if there was a market for marbles. Sure, exactly.
Whale.
Doesn't matter, whales, whatever. Okay? Most of the time, following the propaganda on tout TV and what the government says and lying government statistics that come out, most of the time they'll follow the script, but not always. And it's going to be fun as hell to follow a few times in the near future when they might not follow the script. Okay, when the world is imploding again with deflation, yet gold goes up this time because of deflation. I don't know about a lot of other commodities, but gold will.
But gold is different than marbles, and because it is a monetary, political metal, and it actually depoliticizes the world's geopolitics. And that's why the politicians try to get rid of it, because it controls the monsters from becoming tyrants. And that's why our Constitution required our money to be made of gold and silver. And so we have been asleep in our democracy. We've allowed these guys to do this to us without even understanding what is being done to us.
The enabling force here that's causing all of this is fractional reserve lending. We wouldn't have all of these, this massive leverage in futures in both directions, people going long, people going short, with the JP Morgans trying to arbitrage just a tiny little percent out of that. That's all they care about. They don't care if it's going up or down. They just want to get their tiny little percent out of it. And the more people bet, the bigger the more that adds up. That's what we're talking about here. All this volatility, all of the wealth creation, all the reason why we have this disparity in income between the top 0.1% and then the next 7% and then the 93% on the bottom is all because of fractional reserve lending. And these are all the games that are playing, and it's not like, these banks are calling up each other saying, let's push this, let's get together, let's collude to do this. No, they're just happy to take their little spread, and they know that if they blow up, that the Fed is going to come and bail them out. That's what this is all about. It's not like someone's saying, oh my God, let's suppress the price of gold that makes about as much sense as let's suppress the price of houses. All they want is their little spread on there, and when they make a big mistake, they want to be bailed out, and they have.
Mish is right about the fractional reserve banking thing, but when we took gold out of the system, it put fractional banking on steroids.
Yeah.
And so there was at least some control, and when we had Glass-Steagall, there was some control of what commercial banks that had deposit guarantees on them. But now you take away you allow the Goldman Sachs of this world to be commercial banks, and they go into these extremely risky lending procedures, markets, and then ask us to bail them out when they go down. I mean, it's just unconscionable. It's a number of problems. But when Nixon took us off the gold standard in '71, in my view, that was a pivotal point in American history. It was really almost an inflection point downwards in terms of in terms of work ethics, in terms of morality, because now you're telling people you can have what you want when you want it without working for it.
Well, this is all part of that socialist agenda too. I mean, if you have a real straight gold standard, it limits growth. If you have a limit downside, you have your booms, but they're limited. Your downside is limited. If you don't have anything, it's impossible to have anything like the housing boom. It's impossible because the gold has a limitation. You can't go any further than this. But when you go to fractional reserve, you can go 100 times. Like, for instance, the European banks. You think our banks are bad? We're 13, 14, and some of the European banks, 40, 50, 40% leveraged. So you begin to see now, and what happens if you have a strict gold standard, it's impossible to have many of these social programs. Because you only have so much money now. So.
Or you have them, but you have to pay for them, and
Exactly.
you have to be honest. So when Nixon took us off the gold standard in '71, it was precisely because he wanted to con us all into believing that we could have a war and socialism without paying for it. So the government started issuing debt, and de Gaulle said, well, I don't want any of you stinking worthless dollars. Give me the real money, give me the real thing. And so Nixon closed the gold window because we had a run on our gold. And the American people didn't care, didn't know, and still to this day don't understand why we're having the problems. And none of the mainstream guys ever address this. It's all because of these other issues. I don't disagree with Mish one bit on the fractional reserve thing. I think it'd be possible to have a reasonably good banking system without, without fractional reserve banking. But I don't know that I agree with you in terms of growth necessarily. It's real growth when you don't have fractional. You don't have permissiveness, and you don't have theft by the bankers that are able to manipulate, and government, because don't forget, government is growing as a percentage of GDP like mad, like wildfire, because there's no limit to the amount of debt. So the wealth is being taken from the people that earn it, the miners, the manufacturers, the inventors, the farmers, and it's going off to the people who manipulate the system, Wall Street and the bankers and Washington. And the middle class is being hollowed out at a very, very rapid pace in America. And anybody that believes inflation is 1.7%, I mean, if you define inflation as the same basket of goods year after year, I don't know how many people in here believe 1.7% is a fair amount for you to increase your Social Security every year, that you're going to be able to live, your costs are going up only 1.7%. Anybody in here believe that?
No.
You do. God bless you.
Yeah, let me move on.